Right, it's time to move on. We're about to introduce the new track, and to introduce it, put it this way, Estonia is such a small dot on enormously big map. Despite this, there's still a lot of people coming to Estonia, moving to Estonia and doing business in here. This year, for the Latitude, there's been over 20 different countries represented sending the delegations here. That means 20 partners to collaborate for you guys. As one of the veterans of Estonian tech space, Reiner says, a true global village. And that's the name of the track, Global Village.
But in the next chat, we're actually going to talk about beyond the hype. Estonians are well proud for being this digital nation, for breeding unicorns faster than one can count. But what does it looks like outside of the bubble? And has it all been positive, or has there actually been negative consequences to that? The moderator of this intriguing panel will be Kaidi Ruusalepp. She's the president of Founders Society, and she will be joined by Alan Foy, Pramod Bashin, Mike Reiner. Please, let's welcome our next panel to the stage.
Welcome, guys.
Hello, good afternoon. I understand it's the second half of the second day, but really cheer up because we have half of the day still ahead of us. Super excited to introduce you such a good line of speakers to talk about how they see Estonia and the Estonian investment landscape. And the way the people have been picked to the panel is starting from the right-hand side, from you, Mike. Mike has been coming back and forth to Estonia for the last 10 years, or even more. So you've seen the country in and out, and now you keep coming back with your funds. Then Pramod, he's giving the view from Asia, and one of the largest countries, and soon the largest markets, India, and Pramod is also an investor in Estonia and one of the LPs in Karma. And then the newest kids on the block, VC, and private equity, Alan Foy. So the question number one, which is super easy, which is the whole content of the panel. Why are you here? Why are you in Estonia? Alan.
Well, I start. Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. And the reason I'm here is because Kaidi is very, very persuasive, I think. No, I think genuinely we're so excited by what we're seeing in Estonia. Your history, you should be very proud of your history and your heritage as a startup nation. The digitization of the world really has started and is created out of here. And in fact, we run a fund that invests obviously in impact in areas like healthcare and education and so on. And I'm particularly interested in how digital transforms value chains. And we've just seen some great examples in Estonia of how that happens in practice and how you've taken those products and services and brought them international. So I'm really excited. And I think there's a lot that other countries, quite frankly, can learn from Estonia, and we need to spread the word.
Good. Pramod, why are you here?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm here because I love this place. So can I just say that? I'm here because I love this place, have some very good friends, and I love the culture. I love the way it's working. It's a little miracle, in terms of what Estonia does. It punches so far above its weight in terms of the technology it's created, the ecosystem that it creates. Look at Latitude. This is the biggest festival, across in many parts of Europe. And it's done in tiny little Estonia. So I absolutely come here because I think I can learn so much about technology that they're building. And I hope take ideas from here back to Asia, which I hope is a huge market for a lot of startups in Estonia.
Mike?
From my perspective, I've lived in Estonia for 5+ years. So it's a bit of a second home, which is why I'm coming back. And from a business perspective, I'm coming back because I think the talent, the founders, is exceptional. It's not for nothing that it's such a, for 1.3 million people, such high percentage of outliers. So yeah, I always love coming back, and right now it's a bit of both, you know, the business part of spotting new interesting startups and catching up with old friends.
All right, but as you already speak, and I mentioned you keep coming back with the funds. So tell us a bit more about the funds, what's the investment strategy, mandate?
Yeah, so we invest pre-seed, seed stage. We invest primarily in companies with interesting data angle. So organically means a lot of AI and machine learning type of companies, but also cybersecurity, infra, enterprise software. Tickets, 150K to 1.2 million. So yeah.
Pramod, what's your investment strategy?
So mine is a little more vague as an investment strategy. I'm an investor in Karma, as I said, which is a deep tech fund. So I learn a lot about the company they've invested. But basically, I'm looking in 3 or 4 areas: education, health tech, business services, analytics, perhaps a few others. And I'm looking for businesses which have come up with unique solutions which have global applicability. So my idea is really to try and find companies whose products and services we can take to Asia from here in a partnership or some way. Mainly because I think most of Europe doesn't look to Asia much. Estonia, very few people do. And yet Asia, to me, represents now one of the highest growth market and will be for the next 20 years. So I hope I can be a catalyst and help companies think about building a business in Asia, coming there, opening doors for them. It's a black box, India. Lots of regulations, lots of informality, complete chaos. But once you get through that, the growth rates are phenomenal. And the applications for a country of, you know, it's 1.3 million here, we're 1.4 billion there. So that if you can build a product which can scale there, trust me, you can conquer the world.
So investors could also be seen as gateways to the market.
Absolutely.
And India is a huge market.
Absolutely. And I think I'm far more interested in becoming that gateway and helping companies build businesses in Asia than I am in pure investment. Investment is interesting, but I don't think it's as interesting as building and scaling new businesses, which are what I've done all my life. And then particularly in a new market like India, where there are so many gaps in the market, there's enormous opportunity in almost every area that you look at because it's a poor country. And therefore, if you can bring some cutting-edge technology and things to India, I honestly think it's a fabulous market right now.
Excellent. How and where do you invest?
Yes, well, the first thing I should say is I'm a kind of a poacher turned gamekeeper because I was a technology entrepreneur who then went and became a VC. So I suppose in many respects, in VentureWave, we invest off our own balance sheet, but we also have 3 funds under management which are in the impact space. As I said, healthcare, education, quality of life. We also invest in the kind of energy, the environment space, climate, food and ag tech. And again, looking at value chains, how you can disrupt those value chains, typically software plays that have transportability globally and applicability globally. You know, in terms of the thesis of capital, I feel like to a certain extent, we're very motivated by what I call almost like a triple IRR, which is the investment IRR, but also the impact to society globally, both through, even in every business, you can make an impact if you really make it as part of your mission. And then the third one is how do you kind of contribute to ecosystems, like the ecosystem here? How do you spawn the next generation of the next wave of future business leaders and future entrepreneurs? So we have a multifaceted strategy, as I'm sure many of you may know. We've recently invested in an amazing Estonian company called Funderbeam. With one of the best CEOs globally. And you know, why was that? Well, basically we invested in your business because it was a really strong business that had disrupted the value chain in a particular area of the investment process that has applicability globally and is best in class and was global from the get-go, thanks to your leadership. So, you know, a lot of funds, like I'm sure the guys will agree here, a lot of funds are very mandated and very, very structured, but ultimately it comes down to great founders. You need great founders. Without great founders and great people, you can't achieve anything. And, you know, a product doesn't sell itself, a service doesn't sell itself. So we're very people-oriented.
You have pretty interesting story. I remember when we first met, and you know that Tim Draper is our investor, and you have a story with the Tim Draper.
I did, yes, yeah. So when I used to be an investment banker, so forgive me at one stage, and I went to a conference, and Tim Draper was speaking of the Hotmail story and so on, and I was about to move into the venture capital arm of the business at that point, and I went up to Tim Draper and I said, Tim, it's great, you did a great presentation, thank you so much. I'm actually going to be a VC, and I was about 24 at the time, 25 at the time. And he said, well, have you ever run a business? I said, no. Well, he said, well, you're going to be a VC because you don't know how to scale and build a company. So basically, I took that to heart, went off and did the whole entrepreneurship thing, got that out of my system, and back again to help contribute to that ecosystem. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Let's play a game. Now, whoever needs a quote about Estonia, I'm going to say a word. Imagine if Estonia would be an animal, for example. Who would it be? Mike, I have a word for you. If Estonia would be a book, what book would it be?
Startup Nation.
Why?
Wow. I think the book was written about Israel, but I think it's equally applicable to Estonia, obviously. And I've been there early in the ecosystem, so I've seen this develop, and it's incredible. I don't know what the latest stats are, but I think probably, per capita, Estonia ranks the highest in Europe, pretty sure. So incredible pace. I mean, what happened here, especially last 10 years, is unbelievable, right?
Cool. Pramod, for you, I have a word. If Estonia would be, because you said you have many friends here, if Estonia would be a person, dead, live, scientist, whoever, who would we be?
So I'll go offbeat a little bit, if I may, because I find Estonia to be maybe Estonians won't agree with me, but I find it to be a very happy place. People are enthusiastic, they have huge energy, they're very proud of their country. It has terrific aspirations, and they think in a very humane fashion, I always find, whenever I have a conversation, like with Margus at Karma yesterday, we were talking about the meaning of life, etc. So actually, I would think I relate it to a little bit a small country on our northern state called Tibet and the Dalai Lama. And I would relate it to that it's a story of doing well, of happiness being a very important part of the country, and people thinking about humanity along with making money. And I think that's a fabulous combination that I hope
Thank you.
there's other people on the further western side who could learn from you a lot. So I think about that.
Very cool. And Alan, because the full band of U2 is your LPs, if Estonia would be a song.
Very good. Well, it has to be a U2 song now, doesn't it? I'd say Elevation, on the sense that, Estonia is in the ascendancy, it's growing, it's had great ambition, it's kind of on its own kind of celestial path to a certain extent. So I think, yeah, Elevation.
Excellent, excellent. But now let's go deep and also give feedback to the country how to develop, because the best way to learn is also to learn from the past and the mistakes and the stories. So, Mike, going to you, you've been, like we mentioned, coming back and forth, and you know this country for many, many years. What has changed, and how has it changed for better, for worse? So.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many stories, but maybe a few anecdotes. When I moved to Estonia originally in 2012, I remember one of the evenings where I registered my company, and back in the days it was even easier, I think, because back in the days, in the evening, I would fill in a few questions, register my company. I would wake up not only to find my company being registered and everything, but I even got a banking account. Right? I don't think that's possible anymore due to money laundering, and that's gotten a bit harder for obvious reasons. But I think what has changed back in the days in the ecosystem was, of course, that you had all the spillover effect of Skype, starting a lot of companies. I mean, Wise is a great example, and there's many others. But I think back in the days, the ecosystem was still much younger, but very hungry. I remember back in the days, especially, kind of this catching up to Finland attitude, and And I think when you look at the difference now in the delta in 23, what has changed is obviously there's so much talent and also money now in Estonia. So many angel investors, that left Bolt, that left Wise, and any of the unicorns. But that comes with the good and the bad. The good is that so much like high-level talent, whether it's product, sales, commercial, can now go into startups or start new companies and then right away play at the top level. I think the bad news is that I've seen also the ecosystem become more arrogant. Now it's toning down a bit, but at 21, on a regular basis, you would be more like, hey, tell me why you're allowed to give me money, and so the arrogance is also something to pay attention to, which I think already happened a bit more on a global scale. In 21, things grew out of hand, and globally in many ways. Anyway, so that's one thing where with success comes responsibility and comes also humility. Yeah, I think.
Is this the attitude you also look in the founders, like starts from humbleness, hungriness?
For sure.
Which comes first, humbleness or hungriness?
Look, I think what comes first. It's both equally important. I think it's not even necessarily humbleness. I think it's just being a good person. Because you want to look. It's
Yes.
like a marriage. You want to work with someone, and you're also next to the person to be incredibly driven and very good at what they do. You want to like that person, and vice versa. You need to be having a relationship where you enjoy it. You're going to talk a lot. You may get calls at 11, 12 p.m. And you don't want to do this with a person you don't like. Plus, you also want to have, at least from my perspective, the conviction that the person also wants to change something for the good. So we don't invest necessarily in impact companies, but I'd like to invest in founders that have a vision that I believe in, and that is at the very least not negative.
Sure.
One additional thing that was really helpful investing back in the days in 2012 was the population of the country, where, I'm half German, half Dutch. Germany back in the days was a huge problem with startups because so many startups were just built for the German market, and in the German market being big enough, there's a lack where until they would go global, they lose a lot of time. Estonia already back then, it was always the motto, pointless to build anything for the local market, go global day one. And I think that's also part of the reason why Estonia has been so successful next to the talent, the culture, and many other factors.
Okay. Pramod, do you remember the first time when you've heard about Estonia? And what was it?
Well, again, I think, it's part of what I love about Estonia. The first time I heard about it was from your ambassador, Viljar Lubi, who was in India, the ambassador to India. And he invited me for a dinner with the minister who was visiting at that time. We didn't know each other. We sat together. We had absolutely a great time. He's one of my closest friends now, I would say, in the world.
Someone tweets, Viljar, say hi.
Viljar knows that. I'm meeting him. No, he's landing at 10 past midnight. I'm meeting him at 12:30 at night tonight. So we're very good. But I was mesmerized by their enthusiasm, the encouragement, the energy, the desire to do business, to attract people to Estonia. And it's a country that punches so far above its weight because I hadn't heard of Estonia. I wasn't sure where. And then the first time I came here was entirely because of the machinery he was able to pull together, got me to speak at a few events in Tartu and Latitude and so on and so forth. And suddenly you realize you're building an ecosystem in this small country which rivals anyone else, right? And perhaps the bigger countries became arrogant and Estonia has got in there, and I think that's a great way to build a business. So my experience has been this is my 10th trip here or something, but the experiences have been unquestionably enthusiastic and inspirational every time I come here. And I think it's an amazing culture that the country has.
Has it changed? Positively, negatively?
It's changing. It's changing. It's certainly grown in size and scale and reach and awareness. So certainly a lot more people around the world have heard of Estonia and e-residency and e-governance and how it's a model state for that. And so those examples are fantastic. I sit in some government meetings in India and they all talk about Estonia and saying, why don't we try and replicate their e-governance model in some of the states in India, which is remarkable, right? Some state in the middle of India, they've never been here, and they talk about it. And yet, I think it hasn't changed in terms of scale, in terms of thinking about businesses at enormous scale. If I go to Israel, if I may take that example,
Yes.
those companies, because they look at the US as a market, scale massively, ridiculously fast. And I think that is something I hope Estonia will do and Estonian founders will do, and think about not necessarily the US, but India, Indonesia, other parts of the world, Africa, as places where they could scale exponentially. Quite often, if I talk to founders and say, well, how big do you want to be? They talk about, well, we'll go to Austria next, and we'll go to Finland, and we'll go to Sweden, etc., which is wonderful.
Excellent.
But, there's a mammoth market out there. And the Scandinavians, of course, have been very adventurous in the past, Viking, but the Estonians could be, so if I may, so please come to India. We'll take you home, we'll show you the chaos.
Instead of going to Latvia and Poland, go to India.
Go to India, come.
Good.
It's a crazy place, you'll love it. It's
Very good. One of the things, Alan, what you said about the Estonians is that Estonians are very straightforward people.
Yeah.
So, but imagine I'm not here. So about your only investment, but latest investments, what would you say to the fellow investors about what Estonians or what Estonia is as a country or the company?
That's a really good question. It's funny, where did I come across Estonia first? Like, one of my first businesses actually was a kind of a business equivalent of Skype. So I did a lot of research around Skype way back. And what I'd say is that when I look at anyone I've met from Estonia, first and foremost, those that have gone global are the ones that have been really, really successful. And the directness, the frankness, the commitment to actually improving the process, if that makes sense, to the best it can be, that kind of unrelenting determination to get it right has helped dramatically in that exporting, kind of philosophy. So I would suggest that, the directness, I think, is appreciated. Actually, I made a comment before we came on stage that Estonians will do phenomenally well in New York, where they really value being straight to the point and direct, which is really helpful. And in fact, in the Irish mentality, where obviously we kind of go a bit of a circuitous route sometimes, but there's one big similarity is that we have quite a small home market, and we did exactly as mentioned, focus a lot on the US market. So if you can crack your product or service in Estonia and it's optimized to the best it can be, it's going to have so much success in huge markets. And I think that ability to optimize, to get it right, to scale it, I'd be very bullish, quite frankly, on the startup community here and the potential impact it can make on the world stage. I really am, yeah.
So what type of companies should come to you? So pitch your VC to the companies who need funding.
They're really good companies, I know. So basically, any company that's really innovating in the value chain, as I say, of healthcare, of edtech, software-driven. I'm a big believer software still solves huge problems. So technology-driven businesses that maybe have a hardware software component, but ideally a software component with scale that are really mission-driven. And I have this real fundamental belief that in business you can do good while being in business. They're not mutually exclusive. They're mutually reinforcing, quite frankly. And I love meeting entrepreneurs that have that kind of impact intentionality. It's not that we're not trying to run not-for-profits, we're trying to run profitable businesses that scale dramatically, but we're thinking about the legacy, the legacy that we leave our children, our children's children, and so on. And investors are voting with their feet, quite frankly. Like, our LPs and family offices are under pressure from the next generation of families to actually allocate capital wisely. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for Estonian startups to position products or services in the impact space that are making huge inroads in fundamental areas like health and education, like e-government and so on, and bring that internationally. So my sense would be, really great companies, really great founders. I love to see breadth in founding teams, quite frankly. So diversity on the founding team. I love to see strong tech. All of the above.
Email, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, call.
Yes, well, venturewave.com and submit.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike.
Well, as I mentioned, pre-seed, seed stage, very strong founders, especially if you're working in with data, artificial intelligence. Our tech partner is an AI expert, well ex-operators. So if you're
Size of the ticket?
size of a ticket, I mean, early as 150K until 1.2 million initially that we do. We're quite hands-on, and I think the ideal founder for us is an experienced one that has already built a company before, not necessarily, but that's the ideal case, and that is building something highly scalable, and where our knowledge in AI and growth marketing in particular can really benefit.
How to reach out?
Very flexible, but ideally not via LinkedIn. I prefer email. My phone number, WhatsApp is also good. Yeah, I mean, hit me up, tap me on the shoulder, let's have a chat on the conference as well.
Good. Pramod.
So slightly different tack, if I may. So I look for founders who have enormous temperament, hunger, energy, curiosity. To me, curiosity is probably the most important characteristic I ever looked for, even while I was building large businesses or looking for entrepreneurs, because you go through many ups and downs, but curiosity will get you through them. So to me, those are very important elements. And you'll do many things wrong, and then only with curiosity and hunger will you pivot and change and do something else differently. So I look for that as much as a great idea, for instance.
Is entering Asian market or Indian market is a must-have or nice-to-have?
Sorry?
Is the ambition to enter Asian market or Indian markets must be or nice-to-have?
It's a nice-to-have. I wish it would be more of a must-be, but I'm also very happy to convince people to come to Asia even if they're not thinking about it. So part of my job I think about here is to meet founders and then say, look, think about Asia. Many of them say, look, it's too far, too strange, too different, etc. And so I say, look, but hopefully I'm there. I've built a lot of businesses, and I can help you navigate that, and it's not as far. I think there's a great saying I've always loved, which is, which is the bumblebee, because of its size, weight, wingspan, by all tests, should not fly. But the bumblebee doesn't know that, so it flies anyway, right? So you have to go into places like Asia with no fear of failure. You have to go in with gumption and courage and just say, it's a huge market, how can I not succeed?
Yeah.
And that's where we come from.
Yeah, very good. And very, very final question. One word from each of you. One thing what to change. If you think about the Estonian startup landscape, ecosystem, one thing what to change. Who wants to take it first?
One thing to change in terms of founders?
Anything.
A bit more
be less
enthusiasm.
arrogant.
A bit more enthusiasm. I love the humbleness, a bit more enthusiasm.
I would say scaling. Just think about life at a very different level. Don't think there was a panel I attended called Thinking in Billions. Think in billions, don't think in millions. That's what I would say.
Good. Alan?
Communicate and promote. The world needs to hear your story.
Very good, very good, very good. People, thank you and help us to communicate because the world needs to hear our story. 3 brilliant investors looking for the pitch decks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's really good to hear another angle to Estonia for a change.